DW Africa Link.
Education is expensive, isn't it? The only thing more expensive is ignorance. In Uganda, the rising fees and weak public funding are quietly pushing many families toward vocational and skills-based pathways. Could this growing shift prove more practical for Uganda's job market? What is needed to make education affordable and again? That's what's coming up. I am Madunia, and you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Even though primary and secondary education in Uganda is officially free, families still pay for uniforms, books, meals, exams, and other costs. And don't even get me started on private schools. They can charge hundreds of dollars per term, far beyond what many families earn. Many parents are pushed to the brink, taking on heavy debt, selling assets, or turning to high-interest loans just to keep their children in school.
We mothers, the way we are suffering, remember we have just finished Christmas, New Year, we spend all the money. Of course, kids, you have to buy them dresses, what. Now again, as you come back, school fees.
I would say paying school fees in the Ugandan environment is a nightmare to the average parents, I would say, because there are those who would say they can really afford. But I personally, it is a burden. It is a burden because an average primary going pupil, primary and day, is 1 million and above. A school that would rank in one of the good schools, I'd even put that in quotes. We have to do everything possible. We have to put all our development plans on hold. We sell property. We go for loans. Actually, even banks now, they keep on sending notifications. Do not suffer with school fees. We can give you school fees loans. That is how bad it gets. So it is really not a good place to be. A parent, a Ugandan parent, paying school fees is not a good place to be.
I think the government must be able to regulate institutions of learning, and that's in terms of school fees and the needs that actually parents have to provide for the students. Because sometimes you only look at school fees. Actually, there is a huge problem when it comes to the necessities that a child has to go with when they are going to school, reporting to school. So when you add that, actually, that's what makes the school fees to be too expensive. But also for the parents, I think we must be able to bite what we can chew. It's not necessary for you to take your child to school that is really too much expensive.
Let's get more from an educationist. Dr. Jane Kengeya Kayondo is the founder and CEO of Rounding Up the Edges International, ROUT for short. It's a non-profit company focusing on bridging the soft skills gap in the education system. I also have DW's Frank Yiga in Kampala, Uganda with us. Frank, education is getting too expensive in Uganda. It's really tough for parents to cope with the high school fees, isn't it?
Definitely, it's not good news. It doesn't sound these parents year in, year out. Not only years, but termly, because we have 3 terms in a year. And whenever a term is about to begin, the pressures increase on where to get the money and how to get the money. Of course, many parents borrow left, right, and center. They try all means to see that at least they raise at least half of the money that is required by the school. For those who pay full amount, it's just the one parent out of 100. We find those paying, even school fees for a year. But most parents I talk to, the pressures increase. They start panicking, looking for avenues to get the money. And of course, there's other requirements that are needed besides school fees. You find that schools have turned, school owners have turned learning institutions into businesses. And I can assure you, Eddie, that the most lucrative business or income besides being an MP is owning a school here in Uganda. So all that falls on parents. So they squeeze so much from parents without any mercy to ensure that at least they earn money from them. So it's not good at all when it comes to return. It's not really good for parents when it comes to, looking for money to meet the school requirements and educate their children.
I'm just wondering how it got here. Has it been a gradual increase in school fees over the years, or has this always been the case?
Yeah, it has always been the case. Because of recent, we've seen things skyrocketing. It could be the high cost of living, based on that, but still that does not justify the increment in fees that is so exorbitant. We've had this coming. It beats one understanding for a parent, to pay fees way higher than what they earn, way higher than their income. I may earn $100 a month, but I'm paying fees of $500, and I have more than 2 children. I'm paying, 4. So you see parents paying school fees in shifts, one after the other, not having all children go in school. So of late, it's when the system going out of control. And it's so sad that we have government officials, the entire education sector, ministries and all those agencies looking on as things go astray. And to make things sad, those government officials are the ones that own some of these schools. So that's why they're having a blind eye as parents suffer and choke on school fees.
Right. It's an interesting way you put it at the end. The parents are definitely choking on expensive school fees. Dr. Jane, coming to you, why should educating kids be so expensive?
No, actually, it shouldn't be. It's the fact that it's so expensive is a failure of some sort. Education, at least at some level, should be affordable, and it should not be discriminated. Everyone should be able to go to school. So these costs are abnormal. They shouldn't be. But ideally, we are supposed to have, at least at the primary level, we are supposed to have a kind of free education system, although it is not free. But part with it, you have the private sector, which I think Frank talked about, which charge exorbitant fees. So even those who remain within the so-called free system, there's still some fees to pay and parents can't afford. But then you have this mushrooming private sector education system, which is the prices are not controlled. People decide what they charge and parents have to pay that. It should not be unaffordable for a parent to educate their child.
The argument being made is that education is better with private schools than the public schools. And so for some that can afford, that's the number one option for them. What is the right way to deal with education to prevent it from being so expensive?
There's no way you can eliminate the private system. That's part and parcel of the dynamics of life. In every sector, there's possibility of a private system. But I think what should happen is that government system is where most of the control should be. If it is large enough to absorb a large percentage of those who need education, if it is of a high quality education, if it is accessible geographically, if it's not discriminative in any way, people will not necessarily opt for the private system. I think what is to control may be to work on the public system, and then as many people, I'm sure, would prefer to use the public system if what I said is right. But as long as that's not what is happening, then of course there is this sometimes false belief that in the private system you get a better education.
Would you call it a false narrative? Isn't that a case that somehow because the private sector pumps a bit more money into the system, the education is better?
And what is a better system? Because I think the fact that in some of the schools, the pumping of knowledge into children's heads is too much. And if that defines better, then kids are really, 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 really being pumped so that they can produce the high grades, the high marks that are seen as the definition of better. I think there's a whole misunderstanding of what's a good education system, what's a bad education system. As long as we are rotating around grades as defining better, some of the private education systems, they don't have curriculum activities. All they have is pump kids until you churn out a 4 or an 8 or whatever these grades are. They can pump in, but what they are pumping, what I think is mainly grades is what is killing our system. People are not looking at, are we developing character? Are we shaping an all-rounded kid? Are we making them potential leaders for the future? Are we building their self-esteem? No. As long as they get 4s and 8s. So that's what I mean by it doesn't necessarily mean better, because for me, better does not necessarily only mean grades.
Are we saying that the whole educational system is flawed to begin with?
I wouldn't say flawed, but I think it has big holes to be filled. Because as long as you focus on just grades, mainly grades, it's a false education system. There needs to be a rethink of what is a good education system, what makes a good school, what makes a good student.
Yeah, I'm asking myself that same question. I mean, if you take your child to a school and they come back with bad grades, automatically we look at that and say, well, that was terrible. You've been a bad student. How else do we judge if a school or an educational system is good or bad, Dr. Jane?
I think we've already gone this route of bad means low grades, good means high grades. It's a very slippery road because there's always the normal distribution curve. You have some students who may not necessarily be academically top-notch, but they have talent, they are good sports people, they can design things, they are entrepreneurs, they have skills that don't necessarily measure up in a 4 or an 8. Then, of course, you have this other side of the spectrum where you have students who are A, B by nature. You can say they are super intelligent. And then you have the majority of the rest of us who are normal. We will get good grades, but at the same time, we are capable of creativity. We are capable of other things. But people are not looking out for those other things that make a person who they are. We are looking at only the grades. And we get a very distorted picture of what is a good school, what is a bad school, what is a good student, what is a bad student, because we are not focusing on the human elements of people. We are just focusing on how much they can cram and then how much they can churn out. And that's a completely different false way of looking at what's a good school, what's a bad school, what's a good student, what's a bad student.
Thanks for that, Dr. Jane. Yeah, I remember those days back in school. It was called what was it? Chew, pour, pass, forget. So basically, a student has to cram things in their head, remember, get to the exam, pour it out there. And then after a while, you don't really use what you even learned. And I think that's some of what you're touching on. Frank, I would assume some members of the government will know this. Is there any attempt by Uganda's government to relook at the educational system and make it work better for its people?
Yeah, I think the government is not seated, though there is some reluctance. They're trying all means to ensure that at least they give a better education to transform, the approaches we have in schools. Though some have been in existence for quite a long time. I mean, they have been using the same approaches for over 50 years. It's just of recent that at least they attempted to transform the lower secondary school curriculum. That's an attempt at least to give a new face to the education system in schools. Now, at least we're having them engage in hands-on or skills. They call them projects in schools. Could be agriculture, say farming. Others could be, say, engineering. That's a new face at least the government has introduced. Though it's been long overdue, but at least we could say better late than never. We're having them do that. Although it's not yet over, we need more of that, because having it done at one section or one level of the school than the other is not good enough. We have it done on the O level, which is the 4 years, but it's not yet enrolled to the A level to have them continue with the same skills. So what happens to the skills they've acquired at the O level? Which means they'll go to thin air, and that means they'll again go back to the formal type of style of teaching that they abolished at the O level.
Thanks, Frank. Dr. Jane, as we heard from Frank, more parents are now considering vocational training as a way of avoiding the expensive school fees. Is vocational training a viable alternative to what we can call traditional education?
Yes, I think it is. And I wish parents could see it as a good first choice for many of their children. Because, I mean, at my time when we went to school, for sure, if you got a specialized qualifications, and those days most qualifications were specialized, you became a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, and you had a title of specialization. You were sure to get a job and your life moved on. But that gradually changed so that now a degree and becomes a badge you wear. It doesn't necessarily do anything for your bank account. And parents see this and children see this. So of course, nobody wants to be injecting a lot of money to educate a child for who they are not even remotely sure that they will be self-sufficient. They will earn a livelihood. They will live even a better life than them. So now, of course, going into vocational training becomes a good way to both increase the rounded upness of people, but also give children skills they can use immediately. Skills they can use as part of their employment. They can also start their own companies. They can also start their micro businesses. They can do hope jobs, like mechanics. They do this, they go here, they go here, they go here. Eventually, they can make a living. So I think parents are really becoming smart, except we still have this concept of only the failures go there, which is so sad, because only the failures seem to be taking the route that will lead them to better success rather than graduate and sit at home for years and years. A large percentage of people graduate and no jobs.
The irony of it, that the so-called failed ones, or those that cannot afford, are taking their kids to vocational institutions or schools where they stand better chances of getting jobs. And then those that stay in some of these expensive schools then finish and are now trying to get work, and it's so difficult to find a job. It's not even funny. It's the irony of it all. So while you advocate for vocational schools, I guess the other question is, are these schools enough? Are they ready to take on more numbers?
No, actually, the schools are not ready. I think recently there was some launching of, I think there were 6, which they called world-class vocational training. But these are few. But this type of institutions, the good thing with them also, they can reach people at grassroots. So you have these vocational institutions all over the country at the different levels, far nearer to where the people live. So maybe as you go up the system, the higher ones may have some capacity, but I think the lower you go, the less the capacity for infrastructure, for technology, for qualified tutors and trainers. So it's really not yet ready. It's absolutely not.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jane. Frank, what happens next moving forward when it comes to Uganda's educational system?
Well, moving forward as regarding say tuition and the entire development of the education sector, well, I would personally believe that government needs to come in so much at a greater extent, and we want to see a Uganda where the best schools are the schools that offer vocational education, that have vocational skills, not schools that are expensive or schools owned by certain individuals. So these are the education institutions that we want to see, where a parent will want to take their child to a school that has tailoring services or skills, that has poultry services, all these skills, are attained by students. That's what we want. And government should not let the private sector set rules. Apparently, it is the private sector that sets pace, and then the government follows. It shouldn't be that way. So we want to see the government take control of the system and also push hard to see that we have more vocational or hands-on programs at all levels of education.
I know I said Frank has the final words, but I can't help but give you 30 seconds, Dr. Jane, because one thing that stood out for me as you're doing with Route International, your organization, is trying to bridge the soft skills gap in the education system, providing training, mentoring, and coaching in soft skills for employability. For many young people across the continent, being trained and ready to be employed can be key, or is key, as we keep talking about high levels of unemployment. That is a good way to also focus on the educational system, isn't it, Dr. J?
Yes, indeed it is, because the education system, however the form and level or nature, has focused so much on the hard skills, the technical skills. They have forgotten these, what we call soft skills. I know that now government is trying to bring in this approach, but it's too early days. So there's still room for companies like ours to fill this gap. And we are not only filling it here, we are registered in Rwanda, we are registered in Kenya. And my dream is to see soft skills academies in different countries in Africa. Then we can provide a holistic education where people can get hard skills, but they can also get soft skills.
It will be great to make sure that after someone finishes with school, that there's a job that is ready to take up the skills that they've learned, both hard and soft. Looking forward to that beautiful future. Thank you very much. Dr. Jane Kengeya Kayondo, founder and CEO of Rounding Up the Edges International, a non-profit company focusing on bridging the soft skills gap in the education system. Also, many thanks to you, Frank Yiga, VW correspondent in Kampala, Uganda.
Thank you, Eddie, and bye-bye.
Thanks, Eddie, for hosting us.
Africa is changing. Don't get left behind. Tune in to Africa Link.
Vocational training is becoming more attractive for many Ugandan families for three key reasons: cost, speed, and job relevance. Technical institutes are often far cheaper than traditional secondary schools. Training is also faster, typically lasting 6 months to 2 years, allowing young people to enter the workforce much sooner. And the skills taught, from carpentry and construction to tailoring and hospitality, are directly tied to sectors where real demand exists, especially in Uganda's large informal economy. So maybe that's the way to go. What do you think? Share your thoughts with us on Facebook at DW Africa. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe, and I am Eddie Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.
MIW. Made for minds.